Hi everyone, I'm Sharon Chinn. This video is to show you how I painted my poinsettia welcome sign. It's painted on the CD wood round convertible plaque, and here's a list of the paints and other supplies I've used. I painted my sign with Golden Fluid Acrylics, but I've also given you suggested colors in the DecoArt Americana line. We're going to start out with the bottom of the board, which I base coated with 2 coats of white gesso and transferred the pattern with gray graphite. Next, I'm mixing up a light lavender color using white, a touch of red, and a touch of blue. Add some water to this mix so it's sort of inky, and with a number 2 round brush you're going to go over all of the gray graphite tracing lines. This will help make them a little more permanent, so when we do our first washes over the design, you won't lose your tracing. We'll fast forward and skip ahead through this, since you've got the idea of what we're actually doing. So once this step is done, you'll want to let it dry and before you put any washes over it so it doesn't smear. The next step is to put our washes. We're going to go over all the poinsettia leaves with a kind of a teal green. I'm mixing some green plus some blue and adding water so it's a wash, and using probably a 1/2 inch flat brush, just go over all your poinsettia petals. The reason for this is the green blue is sort of a complementary color, or it is a complementary color to the red. And as we paint the design, we're going to leave little bits of this green showing through our brush strokes, and it'll make the reds a little more vibrant and just add interest and sparkle to the design. This design is going to be done with just flat brush strokes. We're not going to do any side loading or anything, so it's more of a kind of a modern impressionistic style. When I first started the mix, I had a little more green than I wanted to be on those first 2 petals, so I'm just going back over them a little bit to kind of even out the color. Really probably doesn't matter once we do the red over it. Those little bits aren't going to appear that different. The second color we're going to wash in is a bright magenta color. It's kind of a hot pink. Little more cool, so it doesn't have yellows in it to make it a peachy color. This is a cool pink. And again, we're just using straight magenta. We're adding some water to it to make it a wash, and we're going to brush in this wash over the whole background that's left. It's going to go over our juniper branches and berries and over the centers of the poinsettia. And again, this is kind of making use of a complementary color. Since our colors over top of this are going to be blues and greens, the pinky red color is a complement of, or pretty much of a complement if you go on the color wheel. And we're going to leave bits of this pink showing through our background colors to add some sparkle to the design. When you have the 2 complements together, it just makes each of them a little more vibrant. Here I think I put a little bit of teal where it should have been more background color versus a petal of the poinsettia. So when I put that pink over top of that blue-green, it turned more purple looking, but that's nothing we need to really worry about. We'll be painting over it later anyway. These are good areas of the pattern or the design that are going to be in dark shadows, so we've got our base washes in and they've dried, and now we're going to add some darker shadows in between the different spots in the petals and around the centers of the poinsettia berry. Well, I call them berries, but they're the little round things in the center of the poinsettia. So we want to paint in these dark shadows, and we're using a mixture of the red and blue. So you want kind of a dark red-violet color. I know when I was painting this design, I went a little too blue, so I kept fighting that blue. So I would suggest you stick more to a red color. And I'm using just a small flat, and use the corner of it, or if you'd prefer to use a like the number 2 round, you can use that to paint these areas in. I've also added the reference photo that I used for this. This one, I think I got the poinsettia reference off of PixArt, or maybe it was Unsplash. But I took 2 or 3 different poinsettias and kind of clipped and pasted them together in Affinity Photo to create my reference photo for this design. So I'm just placing it here in the window at the top so you can kind of refer to it to see where I'm putting colors in. And if you're painting this on your own, I would suggest you keep the reference photo on your I don't know, on your iPad or your phone, so you can kind of look at it and see where to place some of these darkest darks. So these shadows have dried, and now we're going to start stroking in some of the shadows on the poinsettia petals. And for this, I'm using just a dark red, so I'm going to mix the magenta plus some naphthol red light. And the reds are fairly transparent. It's just how reds are. And so when we start placing these strokes over our green background, that teal background, because the reds are a bit transparent, they're going to appear darker because it's basically, you're seeing the green through the red transparent strokes. So they're going to look a lot darker than what you see the mix on your palette is. But not to worry, we're going to be building up a lot of layers on this painting. And so we're going to work from dark up to our lightest values. And as we add each layer, we're going to be lightening the colors. So again, you'll see me kind of pausing as I'm laying down strokes, and it's just me looking at my reference photo, trying to see where I see the darker values on the petals. And I'm just remixing as I go along. You don't have to worry about it being an exact mix. You know, it actually is more interesting if it varies a little bit. So I'm going to fast forward the video so you can still watch what I'm doing, but it'll you don't have to sit through it in real time. So I'm going to stop talking for a moment, and you can just watch as I lay down the strokes. Wow, we're through all the shading, and now we're going to add the next color to our petals, which is going to be a lighter red. And we're going to use Naphthol Red Light, some yellow, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name of that yellow, and a little bit of the magenta, so it doesn't get too orange. And again, these are all going to be just strokes. We're going to stroke in the lighter colors on the poinsettia petals, and these kind of go in between, overlapping a little bit these dark strokes we put in. And I really apologized for the glare on the left side of my screen. I went through the whole video not realizing that the light was glaring off my glass palette that I work on top of my table. So this actually is the first video I've done in 5 years, so I have a lot to relearn, and hopefully my next one will be better. This one also just seems a little bit out of focus, and I'm not sure why, so hopefully you'll bear with me and I'll get better at this as I go along. So here we are again using a small, probably about a 3/8 inch flat to put these strokes in of the lighter bright red mix. Again, looking at my reference photo, I don't follow it exactly, but I do use it for my initial positioning of colors, of the values. There are a couple petals in the reference photo that really didn't make sense to me, so I'll try to point them out as I go along, and I kind of changed them to make sure that they had a little drama, or more drama than they showed up in the reference photo. The one thing I would recommend is really pay attention to the position of the petals, which ones are in front and overlapping the ones behind, because that will have a big impact on where you place your darks and lights. The other thing I'd like to mention is you don't have to cover every bit of that teal background on the petals. It actually is more interesting if you leave little bits of it showing through here and there. I really wish I had left a little bit more in my painting than I did. Sometimes you just get caught up in adding the strokes and you just forget and cover everything. So I do like little bits of that blue-green peeking through. Again, I'm just mixing as I go along. You know, the mix is close. It doesn't have to be perfect. It can vary a little bit as you go. And we'll fast forward this so you can watch what I'm doing, and I will be quiet for a little bit. See you at the end of this one. Okay, we've got the basic reds down on our poinsettia petals, and now we're going to add in our juniper stems. And the point is I want to get kind of one coat of paint over our whole board. So we're doing all the foreground stuff first, and then we'll do the background. So for the juniper stems, we're going to do a dirty green. I mixed green with a little bit of red, and when you mix red and green together, which are complements again, they will tone down each other. So in this mix, we're using more green with a little bit of the red to get a dirty, kind of olivey green. So I'm using the chisel edge of my flat brush and just stroking in these juniper stems. I had the one on the right partly done before I realized I had forgot to turn my camera on, so that's why that one was in there a little bit, but you can kind of get the gist of what I'm doing. It's just little strokes on the chisel edge for the stems, and you pull some little branches out and then add some little needles along the edge of each of the twigs that go out. So now we're going to paint in our background. The red poinsettias and the branches don't look too good against this hot pink background, so it's a good time to get something filled in. So I'm mixing up a light teal color from blue and green and white, and using a 1/2-inch flat brush, I'm just going to stroke in this background, just dabbing in around the juniper branches. You want to work around your berries and things. And again, we're leaving this pink background peeking through. You don't want to cover it all up. And once we get this blue background in, the blue-green teal color, you'll see that your poinsettia petals look a lot more vibrant. So again, just some blue, green, and then white. And we're going to vary this color in the background a little bit by adding more white as we work along, so you have some variation in the value of it. So it's not just a flat color. So lay down your strokes, turn your brush different ways so it doesn't look like it has a repeating pattern. Pick up some more white here and there so that you have some lighter values. And leave some of the pink coming through here and there and along the edges. When you dab the background color in among the greenery like that, they call it a sky hole. So it's like you're having the sky peek through your branches. I wanted to add a little more value change, so I added some more white and just working over what I had already put down. I'm filling in a little bit more among the juniper branches. We'll do another layer on this later in the project to give a little more weight to the branches, but you don't want any big clumps of pink, but you do want those little bits of pink showing through. So now we're going to paint in our juniper berries, and I'm using a mix of blue with a little bit of white. You just want sort of a bright, cool blue. It's a different blue than the background. The background has a lot more green in it, so it's a warmer blue-green, and the berries are going to be more of a cool blue. You can use just the corner of a small flat brush. It's probably like a eighth or quarter of an inch brush. Or you can use a round brush if you want to go to something more precise. These don't have to be perfect little round circles, they're tucked in among the twigs of the juniper, so some sides of them might be hidden. If you need to do a second coat over it, feel free to go back and dab over top. So now we're going to paint in the little berries and at the center of our poinsettias, and these are green. So I'm using a mix of the green and yellow, and it looks pretty bright on the palette, on the white of the palette, but when you put that green over top of our magenta undercoat, it's going to look darker. So it's going to be a darker green. But we'll be highlighting these later, so this is a good shadow color. So again, just dab them in there. They don't have to be perfectly little round circles, they're just little clumps of these green centers that are kind of little berries. We're going to start building up some more of the value changes in the poinsettia petals. Right now they look pretty ugly at this point. It's hard to differentiate where one starts and the other one stops, so we're going to start adding some lighter values on the edges. And these value changes are going to give dimension and depth to the painting. When I'm working on camera, it's kind of hard sometimes to find the direction to paint because I try to keep the board flat and under the camera. You don't want to change its position too much, but it's really hard for me to get these brush strokes in. If I was painting on my own, I'd be turning this board around different directions too. That work better for the angle of my brush. The other thing was going to mention as you're painting these in, when you first start adding the strokes and they're wet, sometimes the color looks very, very bright, maybe lighter than what you think it should. But acrylics tend to dry a shade or two darker. So you lay down these strokes at the start, they may look, exaggerated, but as they start drying, they settle down, and you won't have as much of a value difference as you think you do. That's why we're going to be going along and building up these value changes. So this is the first step of building up the light red value. Again, on the side of the board, it's a little hard to see because of that terrible glare I had, but as we move towards the right where it's a more true light, you should be able to see the difference. If your color gets a little too orange, you can always add a touch of magenta to it. We're working with the magenta is a cool red color, and the naphthol red light is a warm red color. So if we just only use the naphthol red light and add the white and yellow to it, it goes more orange. But if we add a little bit of that naphthol red back into it, it brings it back, adds a little bit, I guess, of a cherry color to it, and tones down the orange, brings a little bit of pinks back into it. So it's kind of a push and pull as we work along on these different values. We'll be doing lighter colors, and we'll if colors get too orange, we'll do a wash over the colors to bring them back more to a red color, a red value. So we've got a few layers still to go on this. And again, refer to the reference photo if you have questions about where you want to place your lighter values. You want them especially on the edges of petals that are to the front. I like to highlight those a lot and darken the edges behind the petal. And that really makes these petals pop out. This is one little petal that in the reference photo is really dark, but I decided to make it extra light so it pops forward. It just didn't make sense to me that that petal was really dark in the reference photo. As you can see, adding these lights are really making our petals have some dimension, bringing some forward and some edges are being pushed more into the background. And the way that you get more dimension in your paintings is that change of values. If everything's the same value, your painting's going to look very flat. You need the darks and the lights. Some of these parts that are just little portions of a petal are kind of hard to understand, so I'm trying to just paint what I see versus trying to really interpret what it is. Like here, I'm seeing a little edge of a petal, I think. So I'm just painting what I see in the reference photo, the darks and lights. In this next step, we're going to be glazing some red over top of the shadowed areas of the red petals. We're using magenta plus the naphthol red plus some matte medium and probably a little more magenta than the naphthol red. Want this to be more of a dark cherry color, and the matte medium keeps the paint more transparent because I don't really want to cover up what we've done underneath, but I just want to enhance the color. It's real easy to get orange looking on these reds, and so I want to get more of kind of that cherry red back into the shadowed areas and just reinforce the shadows. So I'm looking at the reference photo trying to figure out where some of the darker reds are and just glaze over these with this cherry red. If you're using the Golden Fluid Acrylics, or even if you use the heavy-bodied acrylics, I think we're only using like 6 colors, 2 reds, a yellow, a green, a blue in this whole painting. Oh, and white. I'm sorry, I left white out. Now like I said, I've given you some suggested colors in the DecoArt Americana line that you can use if you'd rather not mix colors and just want to try to use bottle mixes. What I do like about painting with a brand like Golden Acrylics is they're pure pigment colors. I just do simple mixes, but when you use that very limited palette, your painting's very harmonious because all the mixes are mixed from the same colors. So again, just adding this darker cherry red into the shadows. You can see how it just adds a little more richness to the reds. So we're, playing off the cooler red shadows with the warmer red highlights. We're going to take our reds up a step lighter now, and to do that we're going to mix some of the red with yellow. This will make a lighter, brighter orangey yellow. I'm sorry, orangey red. And we're going to use that to highlight some of these edges of the petals to make them pop forward even more. So we're going to concentrate on the edges of the petals that are in front of the petal behind. The lighter colors are going to come forward and the darker colors are going to go backwards in your design. And just highlight some other areas of interest on the petals. We're just building these values up in stages. And I think you'll notice that as we add each of these layers, the flower petals are going to just get more and more dimensional looking. Okay, we're going to let our flower petals set up a while and dry really well. And let's go back to the centers of the poinsettias and add some pop to the little green berries. We're going to highlight these again, or highlight these for the first time with a bright lemony green. So we're using yellow with just a touch of the green this time. We want these to be a lot lighter. If your green's not quite light enough with just yellow, you could also add just a touch of white. The white will make it a little bit more opaque if you need to, but we're just tapping in some of this really bright lemony green on top of those little berries at the center of the flowers. And you'll see how that really starts adding a lot more interest to those centers. We're going to do the same thing with the juniper berries by highlighting them with a lighter blue. So you're going to use white and add just a touch of blue to it. That phthalo blue is really a strong color. So you just need a little touch of it to make your white a light blue. And so we're dabbing that light blue on top of these juniper berries, and you can see again how much more they show up against those juniper branches. And it's just dabbing the color in. You don't have to get real precise with it. I just kind of kept it towards the top, maybe right of the berries. We're going to some magenta with just a touch of the red and some matte medium. And we're going to go back to glazing over our poinsettia petals. So this is going to be a little bit more magenta than we used on the last glaze. So, you know, again, making a much more cool cherry red and toning down some of the oranges we just added in that last step on the petals. Not covering up all the bright orangey red. You just want to kind of glaze it in and soften it into the darker values of the petals. As I said earlier, these poinsettia petals are a lot of push and pull on these orange reds and the cooler reds. Now we're going to actually add a really bright highlight, a cool pink to the petals. And if you looked at the reference photo, you see some magentas on the petals. So we're going to take magenta plus some white, and it's going to be a very cool pink, and pop some of that in to the areas we really want to highlight. And when you put that cool pink against those orange reds, they kind of vibrate against each other and add a lot of drama to the petals. I'm going to fast forward through some of this, so I don't really paint this fast, but I think you can still see exactly what I'm doing here, adding these cool pink highlights. Right there is, it's a little confusing trying to keep that one petal in front of the other one. So you see me starting and then I wiped it back off, trying to correct what I had done. I'm also adding probably a little bit more of these cool pinks than you see in the reference photo. Again, it's just artistic license, trying to make the painting a little bit more dramatic than what the reference photo is. But as the artist, you have the right to do that. And I would always encourage you, if you're painting my design or your own design, to paint it the way you like it. You don't have to follow exactly what I'm doing. Here I'm going to get some really strong highlights on that little petal that I keep losing into the one that's behind it. And now I'm going to add the final lightest pinks. Just added a little more white to the pink mix. And you can see, just watching from when we first put those first pinks in till now, they've had a chance to dry and they do tone down. They get a little darker. And so we're just going to step them up one more value. Keep these in a little smaller area. I want these little teeny petals here at the center to really pop forward. And these will be the final highlights on our poinsettia petals. Sometimes when I pull the board off to the side, it's because I'm holding it away from me to kind of look at it from a distance. It's always good to step back and look at your painting from a few feet away. We're going to add final little highlights to the centers, the little berries in the centers. These are just little dabs of white, straight white paint. You don't have to highlight every one of the berries, just pick a few that you want to accent. And I'm using white on a number 2 round brush, just dabbing it on top. And you're going to do the same thing to the blue juniper berries. Now at this point I decided I wanted to go back in and fill in a little bit more of my juniper branches. I thought they looked a little sparse, wanted to give a little more weight to them. So this time I'm using the green plus a little red and adding a little yellow to it to warm it up a little. This will make this green come forward a little bit more. It'll be a little brighter. And I'm just gonna fill in a few more of these little twiggy branches. I'm adding some of this green color into the shadows at the center of the poinsettias just to repeat that green color a little more and tone down those shadows if they're too red or blue. To give this a snowy look, since it's winter, Christmassy, we're going to add some snow to the juniper branches. So I'm just using a small flat brush, something maybe 1/8 to 1/4 inch, picking up some straight white and then using the corner of it to dab it on top of the juniper branches. You just want it to look like it's snowed and settled on the top edges of the branches. And this is the final glaze. I'm mixing some of the bright naphthol red with some glazing, or matte medium, whichever you happen to have. They're both about the same. They're just a clear medium that's about the consistency of paint and makes your paint more transparent. And I'm just brushing over some of the pink, the cool pink highlights I put on. So, you know, if they went a little chalky on you, or you want to blend them back into the body of the poinsettia petals, adding this glaze from the center and moving out a little bit into the cool pink kind of merges them together. And finally, to make this look more snowy still, we're going to spatter white paint on the background and a little bit onto the flower petals. I'm using like a 3/4 inch or 1 inch old ragged brush that's gone fluffy, uh, mixing some water into white paint. And you want the paint to be loose. The looser it is, the wetter it is, the bigger your little splatters. Finally, to attach the sections to your convertible board, I've used Velcro coins. I bought them off Amazon. And starting with the top section, I put I guess they call it the hook, which is the hard piece of the Velcro, onto the back of the curved piece with the holes in it. And these are self-adhesive, so you just peel them off the paper and stick them down. Once I had the hook part in place, I peeled off the fuzzy section of each coin, and you have to be really careful because these are very sticky. And just hold them on the edges and lay it down on top of the hook so they stick together. I used a stylus to pull it off my fingers. And you're going to do that with each one. You could probably also leave it on the paper and just cut the paper in sections so you could hold it and lay it down and then peel the paper off afterwards. But you're going to put the coins together so that the adhesive part is up now. And I'd use 3 to 4 of these coins for each section. I started out using 3 on the top and 2 on the middle one, but I really ended up thinking they could use one more towards the middle of the whole circle to keep them even. You want to line those top holes up and put that first piece in place. Press down to make sure it's sticking really well. And then you're going to bring the middle section, which I've stenciled with welcome. The top section I stenciled with polka dots. The middle I stenciled the word welcome and stenciled some snowflakes on it for use with, various winter boards. You're going to flip it over and hold it and position it in place before you press down, because these are so sticky, you don't want to stick them too soon. But put it in place and line it up and press it down. And then we've got the bottom section with our painted poinsettias. And you'll notice when I flip this over, you'll see another poinsettia painted on the back of it. So there was my first poinsettia. I look at it now and it's actually really pretty, but when I did it, I felt like it looked like watermelon slices instead of petals. So I decided to repaint it. So that's why I have a poinsettia painted on the back of my panel. I think this is just really a fun surface to paint on, because you can keep the top 2 and paint different panels. You can buy individual panels for the different parts of the board. So you can buy, extra of the bottom half and paint different designs on it. And as long as you paint colors that coordinate, you can just interchange that bottom with the top 2 sections. And, I always love these changeable welcome boards that I can change out for the different holidays or seasons. I also added a bow to the top. I'll show that in just a second. So I made a buffalo check bow out of some wired ribbon, and I added one of the little Velcro discs to the back of it. So again, if I want to change bows out, I can just unvelcro this one and Velcro a different bow to the top if I want different colors or... So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial to paint the poinsettias, and I hope you'll try this method of painting. I have some more ideas for different designs to interchange on this board, so watch for new ones to come. And I hope you'll subscribe to my channel. Thank you.